Hello, this is Hal Mendelson, retired librarian from the University of Central Florida, Orlando, Florida. I am here today to interview SELA's past president, Mr. Tim Dodge, who served as SELA president from 2018 to 2020. Welcome, Tim. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. I have 5 questions I'd like to ask you, and so if you're ready, we'll start now.
Sure.
Okay, first question is, discuss your background in libraries, please.
Where to begin? I suppose you could date my initial interest in libraries to my days as a child patron in the early 1960s. However, professionally speaking, let's start with library school. I attended the School of Library Service, established by Melville Dewey at Columbia University, and received my Master of Library Science in 1980. My only actual experience as a library employee came during the 1979-1980 academic year when I worked as a general assistant in the serials cataloging department and also in the circulation department. Technologically, it was a very different world in 1980 from today. High tech in the serials cataloging department was an electric eraser I used for updating via an electric typewriter the card catalog cards to reflect changes in serials holdings, and in the circulation department, filling out by hand author and title information on an IBM punch card I then ran through a machine while checking out books to patrons at Columbia University. My first professional position was as special collections librarian and archivist at the Ezekiel Diamond Library at the University of New Hampshire, where I substituted for the regular librarian who was away on leave for a year. This was 1982, 1984. Actually, the job lasted about 18 months. Next, I worked as serials and reference librarian at the Monsignor William Barry Library at Barry University in Miami Shores, Florida for 3.5 years, 1984 to 1987. A very interesting position and a bit stressful since I reported to 2 supervisors, both of whom wanted more of me. I have to note that I also met my future wife, Karen, there. I returned to the Diamond Library at the University of New Hampshire once again as special collections librarian and archivist because this gave me a wonderful opportunity to work 3/4 time while also earning my PhD in history. I did this for 4.5 years, 1987 to 1992. Before I finished that degree, they hired someone else who could work full-time and take over, but I'm happy to say they kept me on until I finished my PhD. Finally, in July 1992, I started my job at the Ralph Brown Drawn Library at Auburn University. First, as a reference librarian in the microforms and documents department, where I got a great education in government documents. The library was radically restructured between 1998 and 2002 under a new director, so what had been 4 separate reference departments were combined into one consolidated reference department. No longer a government documents reference librarian, I was happy to accept responsibility for serving as the history librarian starting in 2000. In 2008, I also took on political science upon the retirement of a colleague. The library continues to change, and there are stressful times, but it's been a very fulfilling journey so far. My department is currently known as the Research and Instruction Department. Although I became eligible to retire from Auburn in July 2017, I've stayed on. Not yet set in stone, but I likely will retire at some point in 2024. Obviously, the computer revolution the past couple of decades or so has radically changed some of the things I do. However, I find that sometimes the old skills using print resources still can come in handy. Databases and email and PowerPoint, etc., are amazing, but there still are times when knowing how to use a print index or how to interpret a microform collection guide can still save the day for a student or other researcher. About 20 years ago, I grew concerned that Google and the internet would make me obsolete before I could retire, but here we are in 2021, and I find myself busier than ever.
Wow, you have a very extensive background, and it's all been in academic, correct?
That's
Yes.
correct.
Okay. You talk about technology just because you said it's changed so much. Is there one aspect of technology that you think has been the most beneficial in your field, as a librarian?
Probably the creation and proliferation of databases, electronic databases. It's just because, as I point out to students, sometimes when I'm working with them, I don't do this all the time, because I don't want to say I'm grandpa, I had to do it hard, you have it easy, but they have 50 years worth of research, let's say. They don't have to go through 50 different volumes of a print index, and they don't have to then use a guide, say, to interpret what do the abbreviations stand for, and then go to a card catalog or a serials directory to find out, do we have that journal? They often, in fact, not only do they get the citation, but they nowadays very often will just point and click on a link in the database and get the full text article right then and there.
Yeah, when I was working, I was amazed how not necessarily easier it was, but how much information was available in just in front of you on a computer rather than having to walk up 5 flights of steps to get the journal, the bound journal off the shelf. So technology has its good points, but it really has allowed people to do a lot more research. Maybe not necessarily easier, but the research definitely is, they do it now a little bit differently.
Indeed.
Yes. Okay. Please describe your history with SELA, such as your first involvement, positions held, and other service.
While I joined SELA very shortly after starting Auburn in 1992, I am sad to say I was just a passive member until 1999. In that year, I attended a leadership retreat type meeting in or near Atlanta, and I do recall meeting the legendary Charles Beard, after whom a SELA award is named. Early positions included serving on the Legislative Committee, chairing the Intellectual Freedom Committee, and serving as a manuscript reviewer for the Southeastern Librarian. The latter, the Southeastern Librarian, manuscript reviews. The latter I started in 2001 and am still serving in that position 20 years later in 2021. I also have served as the chair of the Government Documents Roundtable and also as the Alabama State Representative, the latter position over the years 2009, 2013. Also, I served as the chair of the University and College Libraries section, and I'm proud to say that I was in charge of the New Voices program, where we featured a speaker from North Carolina who received an award at the joint conference held in Little Rock with the Arkansas Library Association. That would have been in 2010. In addition, I served first as a member of the Membership and Mentoring Committee chaired by the esteemed Hal Mendelson, and then as chair of that committee following Hal's retirement. For some unknown reason, past president and also administrative services coordinator Gordon Baker saw fit to nominate me for president-elect in 2016, and then I was actually elected. I had the honor of serving as president-elect while Linda Harris served as president, followed by my own term as president during the 2019-2020 biennium, and now have the honor of serving as past president for the 2021-2022 biennium with Melissa Dennis as president. My current responsibilities include serving ex officio as chair of the nominating committee and also chair of the planning committee. I would like to note that starting in 2020, I served as an active member of the Centennial Committee, chaired by the very able Camille McCutcheon, herself a SELA past president, along with several other great committee members that include a certain Hal Mendelson. That committee is still active in 2021.
You have been involved in a number of SELA committees. And I guess it really did help. I would think it would help quite a bit when you did become president, because you knew what their responsibilities were and you actually had, quote unquote, touched them. You had been, head of those committees or involved in them.
Correct. Yeah, it definitely helped. Definitely helped. Yeah.
Okay. Tim, please talk about your time as president of SELA. For instance, could you share any major accomplishments, initiatives, or challenges you faced while president?
It was a very fulfilling and busy time, sometimes stressful, but always gratifying working with a superb executive committee and wonderful board during the 2019-2020 biennium. Major accomplishments were possible only because of the dedication and efforts of others, but I would include transferring the SELA website from its previous home of 10 years to a hosting service. This is necessitated by the fact that the website committee co-chair's home institution had a policy change concerning the hosting of non-university websites, and hosting a very successful joint conference with the Arkansas Library Association in October 2019 in Hot Springs. I'm also pleased to note several board members took an interest in library advocacy efforts, and the library education section worked on a project to publicize SELA to Southeastern Library Information and Information Science schools. The eruption of the COVID-19 pandemic in March 2020 was a challenge to us all and definitely affected SELA plans and operations. I'm glad that thanks to great work and efforts by many and modern technology, I'm thinking especially of Zoom, we were able to get a lot of significant business done. Many other people, of course, were involved, but I would like to recognize then President-elect Melissa Dennis for so ably working with the Georgia Library Association officers in their successful efforts to transform the canceled in-person joint conference scheduled for October 2020 into a virtual joint conference. In addition, both part of and separate from that conference, we had several SELA Centennial initiatives that were shepherded through despite the complications caused by the pandemic. Among those accomplishments were a program at the joint conference, recording interviews with SELA past presidents, and now that I've joined those ranks, my own interview here is being added to that project, and the establishment of the SELA Centennial Club. Much of this is currently and will be forthcoming. This information will be on the SELA website. While this is a cooperative effort of the Centennial Committee and SELA Executive Committee, I definitely want to salute past president and current archivist Camille McCutcheon for very ably leading these initiatives. I would also like to salute past president and current Administrative Services Coordinator Gordon Baker for leading the successful effort to set up an in-person commemoration program in Signal Mountain, Tennessee, at the very spot where what would become known as SELA was established exactly 100 years earlier to the day on November 12, 2020. Due to the pandemic situation, there were only 11 of us physically present, but thanks to Zoom, the ceremony was made available to SELA members in real time, and it was also recorded for later viewing. One relatively small, but I think important symbolic accomplishment was the rapid creation of the Statement on Justice and Solidarity in response to the national outcry over the police killing of George Floyd. The executive committee very rapidly approved the text, and the website committee very rapidly mounted the statement, which is still viewable on the SELA website. I was also able to then quickly supply the statement to the American Library Association's Chapter Relations Office for inclusion with similar statements sent in by other state and regional library associations.
Tim, with regard to the Zoom meeting, the conference, what was the hardest part that you felt was about instead of having face-to-face conference like we normally have had in the past, compared to doing a Zoom conference?
Well, I would just say, in some ways, probably I mean, there was good provision made for question and answer, but I still think that would have been easier being physically in a room with somebody, whether it's people raising hands or going up to if it's a large room, going up to a microphone and speaking loud enough so everybody can hear. I think that was kind of a challenge in some ways, to handle, to do, but it ultimately it did work. So.
Congratulations, yes. As you gaze into your crystal ball, what advice do you have for SELA to remain relevant during the next 10, 20, 25, or 50 years?
Obviously, this will be rather speculative since my crystal ball remains rather cloudy. Seriously, I would suggest flexibility, adaptability, and loyalty to SELA's objectives. Flexibility does not mean simply giving up and bending to the winds or change or adversity, but it does mean, to me, being able to deal with or respond to whatever comes SELA's way. The fundamentals of librarianship, acquisition and curation of sources of knowledge and information, making these available and serving our patrons, etc., are pretty much the same today as in 1920 and are likely to remain the same into the foreseeable future. However, the information resources, once upon a time essentially just books and journals, have radically changed and expanded as the world has become amazingly computerized in recent decades. Modern libraries also provide an incredible array of services to our patrons, ranging from electronic databases and ebooks to online tutorials and more. So too has SELA as an organization been flexible, moving from a world where association business was strictly done by in-person meetings or conferences and by postal mail and telephone to email, cell phones, websites, and nowadays also to conference software such as Zoom. Adaptability is related to flexibility, but it is more a matter of being willing and able to utilize tools or techniques to better get the job done and to appeal successfully to current and future members. I suspect that younger members of our profession and association would not be as receptive to communicating only or even primarily via postal mail and print communications. Similarly, due to very busy schedules, sometimes a result of modern technology, it should be noted, I suspect many younger members would not be as interested in attending in-person meetings and workshops as in attending webinars and virtual meetings. This is not to say that in-person conferences will not reappear once COVID-19 is finally behind us, but younger and newer SELA members may well bring an expectation that they will have more options for virtual attendance or virtual professional presentation than those of my generation. I turn 64 in April, by the way, in a couple months. SELA has very successfully adapted to using email and Zoom for transacting nearly all association business during the pandemic. Such adaptability is definitely important, in my view, for keeping SELA relevant to younger and future librarians. Finally, this next suggestion is of a more timeless nature, remaining loyal to SELA's objectives. As stated in Article 2 of the Constitution of the Southeastern Library Association, the objectives of this association shall be to promote and foster library and information services in the southeastern region of the United States through cooperation, research, and the encouragement of staff development.
Wow, so 50 years, it'd be kind of interesting to see if your predictions reign true in 50 years. That would be what, 2071?
In the 2070s, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Very good. Our final question, Tim, would be this. Do you have any other comments or stories about SELA that you would like to share?
Sure. I would definitely recommend membership in SELA, especially to newer or younger librarians. The association is more affordable than the American Library Association, a wonderful group, yet it gives much more of an opportunity to serve the profession at large and to make contacts and friends than is possible in a state association. While I've enjoyed great experiences serving in the Alabama Library Association and also the Alabama Association of College and Research Libraries, it's been really wonderful serving in SELA since I now know literally several dozen wonderful colleagues from all over the Southeast. Academic librarians are usually expected to make professional presentations. SELA provides excellent opportunities for doing so and at a more affordable cost than is usually possible at national conferences such as the American Library Association or the Association of College and Research Libraries, to name two obvious examples. The Southeastern librarian is peer reviewed, and this provides another avenue for academic librarians to build up their professional publication record for tenure and promotion. Of course, I would like to encourage public and school librarians to consider presenting at SELA conferences and publishing the Southeastern Librarian too. Also, for early career librarians or those who, for whatever reason, may find themselves in the job market, having a network of colleagues you actually know scattered around the Southeast can be a definite advantage, whether it's for getting leads for job openings or for getting those all-important letters of recommendation. Stories. I have so many mostly wonderful memories connected to SELA over the past 20 plus years. A couple that come to mind right now concern the 2008 joint conference with the Kentucky Library Association held in Louisville. One evening, several of us met together in a bar that featured live music supplied by a singing piano player. As one who plays boogie woogie piano, I, of course, was having a great time. At one point, there was a solicitation for requests, and I suggested The Twist, made famous by Chubby Checker, who had a #1 hit with it both in 1960 and again in 1962. It must be noted, the original recording is actually made by Hank Ballard and the Midnighters in 1958. Anyway, the musician obliged, and it was so much fun as our small group, along with everyone else in that bar, grooved to some vintage rock and roll. In an effort to save Auburn University money, I usually stay at cheap motels when attending a conference such as that one. Well, the one I stayed at in Louisville was not in the best of neighborhoods, and I recall being awakened in the middle of the night by gunfire in the motel parking lot. Of course, police cars soon materialized. Let me note, this was a one-story motel, and I was physically pretty close to the action in the parking lot. One of my Alabama colleagues still likes to joke with me about my choice of motel for that conference. Of course, I do have some more edifying SELA conference memories too. For example, it was truly glamorous attending the 2017 joint conference with the West Virginia Library Association held at the Greenbrier Resort in White Sulphur Springs. Note, true to form, I stayed at the much more affordable Super 8 motel in nearby Lewisburg, West Virginia. The Greenbrier was truly magnificent, and the grounds surrounding it simply beautiful. I do have a cup I bought in the resort's gift shop too as a souvenir, as well as a t-shirt I bought when I enjoyed a visit to the fascinating Lost World Caverns in Lewisburg just after the conference ended. As the history and political science librarian at Auburn University and someone who holds a PhD in history, I really enjoyed my visit to the William J. Clinton Library and Museum, a highlight of the joint conference held in Little Rock in 2010. So far, that is the only presidential library I have ever visited.
Tim, these conferences have allowed you to visit many, many states. So that's one of the benefits of being part of a regional library association.
Definitely.
And that does, and you get a different perspective from somebody from North Carolina to West Virginia to Alabama. So there are so many benefits. I agree with you about being part of
Mhm.
SELA, and the people who are members. They just do fabulous things, and they're really very friendly, good souls to be
They
with.
are. They are. Yeah, that's really been such a highlight. As I said, literally, there are dozens of people I know, some better than others, but I know these people. This is great. I love it.
And I think the opportunity to be involved and the opportunity to improve upon your skills by presentations and to listen and talk
Mm.
to others and attend workshops. Yeah. So you as former past president, it was a great, it was our benefit to have you as president. And sounds like you had a great time along those years.
Thank you. I definitely did. Thank you.
Tim, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. We appreciate you being now officially the past president, and we wish you the best in your future at Auburn University. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.